mean, it was a really lofty goal, but my goal was to have 200 people finish the 100 miler. But everything went well, smooth sailing. It's one of our biggest events, so glad to be done with it because it is kind of a high stress event. But yeah, now it's onward and upward.
Awesome. We'll get a little bit more into it, but we are live. So we are live now with Matt Hammersmith from the Upstate Race Series, Upstate Running Club, Without Limits Coaching. Also, I believe he's doing some coaching at St. Joseph's High School,
That's
correct?
correct. Yeah, St. Joseph
Did
High
I,
School just got done with practice.
did I miss anything else?
I mean,
You got
I
any other
wear
fire irons in the
I
fire?
yeah, I put a lot of irons and a lot of fires, but I'm trying to get them out. I'm trying to
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of get down to one iron and one fire, but it's hard to do.
yeah. Matt, before we get into it too far, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, the socials, all that good stuff they can find out about the races and everything awesome that you guys have going on.
Yeah, I mean, primarily if you go to upstateraceseries.com, or if you can find us on Facebook, Upstate Race Series, or our Instagram, Upstate Running Club, or Upstate Race Series. You can search out. I'm not really big on all that stuff. I try to use it for business, but I don't even have it on my phone. I just kind of
Pretty
log on
good.
to desktop and kind of do my business there. But it is a way for us to engage with our runners. So, want to follow us, want to see what we're doing, just kind of go to those resources.
Awesome. And so a little through line that we do with our guests is kind of how we get you on our radar and all that good stuff. I was coaching, helping out with the cross country program at Seneca High School, and after practice one day this summer, one of the coaches had mentioned a race that was very unique that was coming up in July, and it was this format of a 2.6 mile loop every 45 minutes for a 50K. And I had been thinking about doing a similar 24-hour format race in New Jersey to go home and visit. And I thought that this would be a great way to see how that would be. And so I signed up for your first race in July. I did the Death Pepper 50K, and it was at the time probably the hardest 50K I had done because of the format. And then fast forward to a couple weeks ago, I did another one of your events, and that was the hardest 50K I have ever run over at the Conquer the Rock. So, um, yeah, that's how, we talked briefly in the summer, and then we got to talking a little bit more after the Conquer the Rock. And then in our conversation, we found out that we were both wrestlers. And
Hmm.
not only were we both wrestlers, but we were in two of the three states that only have one state champion per weight class.
That is like really near and dear to my heart because I try to explain to people that, you know, and that's the only sport I think football and basketball were the only sports that went to divisions in Indiana. But everything else, like when I towed the line at the cross country meet, I knew that I was competing against the best that the state had to offer. And obviously down here in South Carolina, you've got 1A through 5A, and then and you're still coaching, correct?
Currently, no, right now I'm just teaching PE.
Okay, now the classifications now have changed. Now there's two 5A divisions. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's I'm like, why are there two 5As? Why didn't you come up with a 6A? I understand like the need to kind of split team sports up, but I always felt growing up, and I maybe because I just didn't know any better, that it was okay for the world. I mean, I graduated with 110 kids in my class, and we went up against Elkhart Memorial and Carmel. Carmel High School in Indiana has 1,500 kids a class, and we felt like we could beat them. But it never dawned on me otherwise until I moved down here. I'm like, wow, I guess there's divisions and there's five state champions and five team state champions, and yeah, the whole thing. Like, I'm not poo pooing it, but it's just nice to come back, or, come from a place where like you just got pitted against everybody. Didn't matter who, what, how big, where you come from. It was, you, that ring, and hopefully 6 minutes.
Yeah. And New Jersey's similar on the cross country and track side where we do classifications. We do a sectional, which is kind of like your area in New
Hmm.
Jersey. And then we do an all group championships, which is all of the like 2A schools. So you have that same similar format where you have the, 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A state championships. And where that ends here in South Carolina, in New Jersey, it takes the top six finishers in track from those events from the group championships, and then they go to an all-state meet of champions, and it
Okay.
combines everyone.
So let me ask you a question. Did you ever feel that if, let's say, you place seventh in the big schools, the 5A, that you could have beaten a lot of the 1, 2, or 3A, or however it was classified? Because we have similar issues here in track where the qualification standards kind of pit the upper state and the lower state against each other. And I'm not a fan of that because I think a lot of the better distance runners might come from the upper state and sprinters might from the lower state. So we've just seen a lot of kids get left behind at the region meet and not even get to go to this, all state or, however you want to, whatever your qualification is. I, not that I have the right answer. I know there's definitely a better answer out there than the one that we're using here in South Carolina and unfortunately a lot of other states.
Yeah, and so what New Jersey does, and I've been out of that realm for probably a decade now, but I do have some friends that are still in it. So we talk, and they've added wild cards.
Okay,
So
what's
let's
that?
say, you're in a 5A and you get seventh, but you run, you know, one of, say you're seventh in 5A, but overall you're still like a top 15 time and
Hmm. Yeah,
faster. So your time would qualify you in. So they take like the top six from every race, and then they'll take the next six fastest times from
yeah,
all the divisions. And then so if that were to happen where you got seventh or eighth, but your
yeah,
time is fast enough, then you'll get bumped in and move through into the meet of champions.
yeah. I'm seeing that happening here in South Carolina. Obviously, you still have divisions. What I liked about Indiana, at least for track, the way they were moving their qualification standard, it was very difficult. And I never qualified. I mean, I went to, I was a state qualifier in wrestling. Never went to state. I just never even got out of my region in track and field. I was a Fort Wayne region. A lot of fast athletes. If you don't get top three, you just don't move on. And it was no division, so it was very challenging to get out. What they had moved to was they took the results of the previous 9 years state meets and whatever the ninth place was, they took those 9 times, the ninth place person of past 9 years of each event, they averaged it out and they said, all right, for the boys mile, the ninth place finish average out over 9 years was 421. If you ran 420.99, doesn't matter what place you got in at the region, you can get dead last. You automatically qualify for the state meet. And if that so happens that that year is a really fast year and 40 boys get qualified for the state meet, well, they're just going to run 2 to 3 heats, which I'd much rather run 2 to 3 heats and be stuck in a slow heat of a mile because I was a 420 or 20 miler than be stuck at home and I'm like, man, I ran a 420 mile, which is faster than, you know, 90% of every other region out there. And I had to stay home. It was not that it was unfair because I just took my lickings and went home, but it was, you just want the state to be represented well. You want the best athletes to be at the state championship meet, whatever sport it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a wrestling perspective, at least, they take the upper state and the lower state and they bring, eight kids together in a bracket, and
Hmm.
you get your, because 1A and 2A is combined. So you get your four state champions in essence, your
Yeah.
1A, 2A, your 3A, your 4A, your 5A. What they could do is take those four kids and put them in another bracket, and then you could crown your
Hmm.
overall state champion. And
No,
I
I
don't
agree.
think it would
Yep.
take that much more effort, but it's all it's all things that need to get worked out. I think it for wrestling specifically too, to have that one state champ per weight class would be ideal.
Does does New Jersey have a women's league now?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Okay, I don't
Yeah.
know if Indiana does or not. I think I saw a couple of posts not too long ago. I think a women they didn't have a women's league, but a girl competed in the men's league and actually made it to the state like the quarterfinals or whatever, was beating kids and you know
Yeah, I think Jersey, what has it been, 4 years, 5 years now, Jim?
2020, I think, was the first year.
Okay. Yeah, so they've had it for a couple of years, 4 years now. And I
Okay,
think
cool.
South Carolina now has had 2 years of girls state
Oh, nice.
championships. So
Okay.
they still kind of have to, during the season, they still have to probably wrestle
Yeah.
against guys, but
Yeah,
they
I
do a
think
qualifier.
there's a girl from Hillcrest. I used to I wish I can't remember their names now. I used to coach them. They used to do a bunch of my races, but I know their daughter is a Hillcrest wrestler, and I think she's actually a highly competitive athlete in her division. So it's cool to see some of those opportunities available because I would like to see my daughter wrestle, but she's probably gonna end up doing gymnastics and ballet.
Those are both good foundations for wrestling.
No,
So
yeah, gymnastics for sure. Yeah, gymnastics for sure.
there's a lot of transfer from gymnastics into other sports. You can take a gymnast and put them, you can give them a golf club, a tennis racket,
Anywhere,
and they're
anywhere.
gonna pick
Yeah.
it up pretty quickly. Where you take a kid that's grown up running and you put them on a gymnastics,
He can't do nothing.
you're not gonna be able to do anything.
I'm very
So
glad that I grew up as an athlete as opposed to a runner. I didn't like running. I just knew I was kind of good at it when I got into high school, but before then, all through middle school and elementary, I was a ball sport kid.
yeah, there's something to be said about athleticism
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
my wife says she has it, but I've seen her shoot a basketball. It's not great.
So Matt, before we you want to go, Jim? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm on the same page as your wife when it comes to shooting a basketball during wrestling season. Anytime oh, let's play basketball, let's play dodgeball, you find me. All right, I'm putting on the running shoes. I'm gonna go for a run. I'm not gonna do any of this. Before we get going, because I definitely want to get into the Upstate Series, how you got going with all that and your coaching. But you're from Indiana. And anytime we have a guest from Indiana, and Rich, correct me if I butcher any of this, have you ever been to the Little 500?
No, I have not.
No.
No, so because I lived about 5 miles from the Michigan border, I went to MIS. I went to Michigan International Speedway. So we were
Okay.
huge, going to that every single year. Never went to the Indy 500.
What was the bike race, Rich?
Yeah, it's a little
All
500.
right, all right.
It's a,
The little
yeah,
500.
yeah, yeah.
No,
We
never been.
Jimmy and I were we were raised on the movie Breaking Away,
Okay.
and it basically it covers there's a group of local kids that live in Bloomington, and so they call them cutters. That was what they called the locals because of the quarries and stuff. So these kids, it's all about these kids that graduated from high school but didn't go to college, and they kind of battle with the frat boys and stuff like that. And they get in this scuffle. And then the dean says, all right, we're going to settle this at the little 500. And the one local kid is actually a cyclist.
Yeah.
So it's basically him competing against this frat team and all these other frat teams that do this little 500 bike race. And then the cutters, the locals end up, spoiler alert, end up winning the little 500.
All right. Now that you spoiled it for me, I'm for sure gonna watch it though. So put it in the show notes. I'm gonna watch it on Netflix or wherever it's at.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid's in it.
Okay. All right.
It
Nice.
was one of his first movies, but yeah, it's a good little get you pumped up. It's kind of like a Rocky-esque type of movie
Nice.
that'll
Okay.
get you fired up, like
Yeah, I'll
Vision
check it out
Quest.
for sure.
Um, so Matt, yeah, we were talking before we jumped on. You just got done with the Country Mile, which is a 48-hour event. Uh, you look like you're rested.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm racing a 1 mile event tomorrow, so it's basically taken me all week to kind of get out of that lull of being up for 2.5 days.
Okay, is it a track race or a road race?
It's a 1 mile race down in Columbia. It's called the Governor's Cup. They got a mile Friday night that I'm racing tomorrow, and then my wife is racing too, and then she's gonna stay with the family and do a 5K Saturday morning. I got to shoot back to Greenville. I'm timing a race over here in Spartanburg Saturday morning. So for me, I haven't. I laced up early in February, and the race didn't go as planned. Not, I guess it was my fault, but I got lost in a 5K. Believe it or not, you can get lost. And so I'm towing the line for a 1 mile race. And so I'm doing the 1 mile race at Governor's Cup tomorrow. And then I'm doing the Downville Mile, which is June 1st, which is a race that I host. but I'm also fortunate enough that I get to race. So I'm kind of going shorter. I used to do the long stuff. Now I'm kind of coming back and doing some shorter stuff.
Have you been training for this mile? Or are you trying to throw down a
Yeah,
fast
so I
time?
was I was training for the 5K at so I was going to do the Swamp Rabbit the Greenville half marathon Swamp Rabbit 5K end of February, and my goal was like to run 16:20, and my first mile was like 5:08, and then we made a wrong turn, and long story short, big old DNF, did not finish. And so I have been training for this mile, trying to keep my mileage low because I'm kind of heavier than I was in high school. Like in high school, I was 162 and I wrestled 152, and now I'm my baseline weight is like 180, which I don't see it, and I don't know if that's how like if I have body image issues from all the years of wrestling and cutting weight and stuff, but I don't see it. But I obviously the scale don't lie, as you guys all know when you get to weigh in. But yeah, I'm have been training. My goal is to run anywhere between 440 and 448 as at the high end.
Okay.
So Matt, you run the Upstate Race Series, and like Rich was saying when we first hopped on here, you have ultra events, you have all kind of distances. Are you usually in that ultra distance as far as what you compete in, or do you go all over the board?
I mean, I haven't really, I'll say I haven't really competed in a few years. I haven't really even trained in a few years. I took basically after, pandemic, I think affected everybody differently. It either made you kind of, um, you know, more introverted, stay inside your house, or you wanted to get out and start, finally had the time to do things you wanted to do once all the social distance stuff. I got to work. Like I was kind of freaking out because my main job at the time was directing races, and all of my races got canceled at, private land and public parks, city parks, and state parks. I was like, man, I gotta, find somebody that's willing to host our races. That's why we came up with like, Carolina Reaper, Longest Day, Longest Night, all the country mile on a private farm. Um, I just kind of got into work and I kind of forgot about running and training for a while and just kind of dug into my work. But now I'm kind of a little bit more settled, and I found that not that I needed running, but I still enjoyed it. I just kind of lost that. I lost that. And I don't know if wrestlers have the same feeling. It's wrestling is a kind of a seasonal sport. Running is kind of more of you just kind of do it all year round. But I just kind of fell out of love with running, so I didn't want to do it for a while. So yeah, it's been like 3 years since I really trained or did anything. So I have been training for this race, but I would say when I got out of college, I was training more for 5K 1 mile. As soon as I graduated at Eastern, I was like, man, I'm going to do a 50K, and then that 50K turned into a 50 miler, and that 50 miler turned into a 100 miler. And I was trying to be competitive, but I knew it wasn't the way I was doing it wasn't sustainable. I wasn't training the way you really needed to. So I'm kind of back to building a base. And so that for me, that's like 1 mile. So I'm running like 25 to 30 miles a week. I'm doing one workout a week. My long run is 8 to 10 miles. And I'm trying to wake up and say, man, I can't wait to go for a run because I haven't had that feeling in 3 or 4 or 5 years. So I'm hoping that things go well tomorrow. Even if they don't go well tomorrow, I've really enjoyed the training stint that I've had over the past 3 or 4 or 5 months. So whatever happens, I know that I can build upon that because I didn't dread this past training cycle, which is it's more common in runners than it might be in wrestling. I mean, wrestling, you spend an entire season cutting weight and getting in shape and knowing who your opponents are. I mean, by a 4 or 5, 6 month period, you just want to take a break and kind of get fat, start getting strong again, hitting the weight room. And, there's a cycle with every sport. And I think my cycle is hopefully just picking up and building that base again.
Matt, you went to Eastern Michigan.
Hmm. Yep.
Are you an Eagle or a Huron?
I'm an Eagle. Yeah, actually, the Hurons, when did that transfer over? It's funny because one of my roommates and Kyle Mena, he was a Huron. He was 3 or 4 years older than me, so they were Hurons very obviously for a while when I first moved there, was a freshman, they just transitioned that into from Hurons to Eagles. So we all have an eagle tattoo on the right side of our hips. Some of the old timers have the Huron tattoo.
Okay. Are you was Paul McMullen around when you were there, or
No, I've
you
run
younger
with
than
Paul
him?
several
Okay.
times. Obviously, the late Paul McMullen
Yeah, rest in
passed
peace.
away. He was a 1996 1500-meter Olympic finalist. Yeah, obviously, a tremendous athlete. Actually, I was just talking to you guys about the podcast I was doing previously with Tom Clifford. Tom went to Eastern. He ran with Paul. So yeah, I was not. I was around the Boaz Chaboyo days. He graduated
Okay.
just after I had come in, and Jordan Deslitz was an NCAA All-American, steeplechase Olympic finalist, Corey Nowitzki, stuff, guys like that. Josh Perrin, Neil Naughton, um, so many guys. Not me. I was just trying to make the team.
Right on. So curious, how does a mid, because I'm a transplant, Jimmy's a transplant, we've transplanted to different places. How does a Midwesterner find his way down to South Carolina?
Yeah, I think so I graduated at Eastern and I was like, all right, well, I got a teaching degree, so PE and health. And I was like, well, and it was funny because I started subbing and I I really didn't like it. It wasn't the kids. I mean, because I coach today and I love coaching, but the whole teaching side of things, the curriculum and I guess maybe the teachers hall, like it just I don't know if it wasn't for me or if I was tainted by I subbed for 6 months at the same school and just like the nastiness of the teachers in their break room was like I can't be
Toxic.
like I'm not a positive. I mean I'm like, but I it was just really nasty. I was like I can't be here. Like I don't want to be in this room for 45 minutes eating lunch with you guys. I can't wait to get back to the gym to go see the kids. Like that was my thing. And so I kind of faded out of the whole teaching thing, kind of jumped into coaching. I started coaching at Ann Arbor Pioneer in Ann Arbor, Michigan, not too far down from Ypsi, where Eastern's held at. Was personal training, and then my old man got sick. We owned a family business, a machine shop, tool and die shop. I went home to kind of help him out and start working there. And we figured out his diagnosis and his meds and all that. He was good to go. And I was just sitting there, like I was living with my grandfather at the time, literally 100 meters, like in a single wide trailer. Um, and 100 meters from where I worked at, I was working 70 hours a week at my dad's machine shop. And I was waking up at 4 a.m. I'm doing 10 miles a day beforehand. I'm running afterwards. I'm eating hot dogs and drinking Bush Light for dinner. And I just was like in this weird year-long mode of like working, training, not socializing, not doing anything I wanted to do. And I was like, I can't be here. No, and I love Northwest Ohio, I love Indiana, but I was like, I can't be here. I got to go do something. And stroke of the luck, I had a friend that lived down here in South Carolina, and her boyfriend at the time, they're now married. They were like, well, we're gonna go move to Charleston. We got a place to stay, and I was like, I just got to get out of here. So it was cold. I think that the year that I left that area, there was 10 straight days of negative-degree temperatures, and I'm like, I cannot wait. And so like I think it was right around Christmas. I was like, I'm gonna pack my stuff up and I'm going down there. And so I just packed all my stuff, got my dog, got my cat, drove down in my pickup truck, and crashed on a couch for 3 months. Found my own place. Walked into the running store on Haywood, Greenville Running Company. And I told this story. Talked to the owner, Jeff Milliman, and he's like, "Hey, or just let me take my information, or let me take your information just in case, because I was looking for a job." And I left, and no more than 30 minutes later, he called me. He says, "Hey, I just had a mom come in, and their son at Greenville Tech Charter is looking for a track coach." And then that's pretty much the rest is history. I mean, I literally showed up, did the interview, got the job, started working. I reconnected with Tom, started coaching for Without Limits. And I was like, man, how do I meet more runners? I started getting fit again. I was running fast. I was like, I'm gonna sign up for every race in Greenville. So I did. I signed up for every race, won most of them. And then I was like, well, how else do I meet runners? So I'm like, well, let's put on a race. So I put on a 5K kids run, 25K, 50K relay, 100 miler. I mean, 200 people showed up. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a cluster beyond get out, but it worked. And after I finally caught up on some sleep the next week, I was like, well, I'm now a coach. I'm now a race director. Let's do it again. So I just started adding more races, and people started reaching out like, hey, can you coach me? I'm getting ready for this. I'm getting ready for that. And pretty much rest was history. I mean, it was kind of I didn't know anybody. I just had one friend that they were already moving, which is kind of a stroke of luck, and Greenville's been very kind to me ever since.
So I'm interested in what that journey was as a race director. You stated that you didn't know what you were doing, but you started throwing on all these races. So what was kind of troubleshooting as far as throwing races, getting them going, reaching out to towns, reaching out to the private properties?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the and I actually just had a call with somebody today that they're a nonprofit in Spartanburg trying to put on a race, and they're like, we have no idea what we're doing. And I just kind of explained to them, I said, you know what, it's okay, because I didn't either when I first started. The biggest asset you have as a race director, really as a business owner in general, is you have to have the ability, and this kind of goes hand in hand with wrestling because it's so dynamical. You have to be able to adapt. If you can't adapt, if you go into it saying, I'm gonna shoot that single leg because he always leaves it open, and if for some reason he's so closed off and so hunched over, it's like, all right, like what the heck? Like I've been watching video on this guy, and you just have to be able to adapt to any situation. And if you can't do that as a race director, business owner, an athlete, probably not going to make it. So that for me was the biggest. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew whenever I came across a problem, I was like, all right, well, how do we solve it? If I don't know how to solve it, who can I ask? And if I don't know who to ask, there's got to be some of the resource out there. So that was kind of my my process. Probably the first 2 to 3 years is kind of trial and error. And I did that. I mean, I was trial and error for probably 4 or 5 years, and I've been doing it now for 10. And I'm just now starting to feel like, all right, I can almost, rest my eyes and time races blindly, or not blindly, but like things are just kind of getting to the process where my identity is kind of woven into how I direct races, and you kind of find out who you are as a race director. Not every race director is the same. So yeah, so being able to adapt and then also cater to your own strength as a race director. So when I'm putting on an event, I know they're not the most, like we don't do all the bells and whistles and pizzazz, but we just have a different niche that I am very true to. I hope I'm true to, and I think the runners see that. And for the runners that don't want that, they want the pizzazz, they want the bells, they want the whistles. They'll find a different race. It's okay. I mean, I'm not heartbroken over it.
So you said you've been doing this for 10 years, and this is Rich and I always kind of look at each other when we're trying to think of ways to be entrepreneurs, and we have good times at some ultra marathons. So it's always something we talk about, but it's nothing we've ever really given much thought. But I'm curious to what goes into breaking even. Breaking even. Obviously, you've been doing it for 10 years, so you're successful and you know what you're doing. Do you have like a checklist of I need this, I need this, I need this to make sure I make some money and I don't lose money on this?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, because we have some of our bread and butter races, like Country Mile is our biggest race. And that's it's 15% of our net revenue every year. And that's a lot considering it's over 2 days. So like all 363 days of the year, I'm probably losing money on something. We hosted Lover's Lane 5K this year, lost money. Hosted the Icebreaker 8K, barely broke even. Some of these races just don't, and it's okay because it's still a service that we're providing for the community. Like it's kind of like, I'm giving some here and taking some there, kind of a situation. If I'm all take at every single race, people are going to snip that out in a hurry, and they're going to know real quick, like, this guy is just, he's skimping on everything, he's cheap on everything. And we are cost effective. We don't There's certain races where you look at a price, I'm like, how in the heck is he even making? People is telling me, like, I've had people tell me at Country Mile, you need to raise your price, you need to raise your price. I'm pretty firm on, I will never charge more than what I personally would be willing to pay for a race. But at the same time, when I have someone, not to, our typical Karens out there when there's like, oh my gosh, $30 for a 5K and we didn't even get a t-shirt. I'm so upset. I'm like, well, I can give you a list of the budget. I can tell you how much it is for, let's just start with taxes. Let's start with permit fees. Let's start with insurance. Let's start with bibs and safety pins and timing chips and the software that we use. I mean, the list goes on and on just to even get a time for you, let alone all the materials that go into, that cost us for hosting the race. So, yeah, not to get into the thick of the weeds, but like, yeah, some races make money, some races don't. And I just think if we are true to, if you're true to like the service that you're trying to provide, people will, I mean, they'll see it. I mean, and I'm hoping that's kind of what we built here is we're not the rock and roll marathon series where we give you this world's largest. I mean, these medals are bigger than my head. And I'm sure they cost an arm and a leg, but we don't have corporate sponsors. We don't, I mean, we have a few PTs that want to sponsor us. We've got a few local businesses that kind of give us in-kind donations. But as far as dollar amounts, we don't get anything. It's all registration based and how we budget our cost-effective race series.
How many races are you holding a year?
28. Yeah, it's a lot. It's, one every other weekend, basically. And sometimes they're back to back. Sometimes we have two races one weekend. Actually, it's crazy how you guys are calling me. This is the longest break that I'm ever going to have throughout a year. I time a bunch of races in the month of April. I direct Country Mile the first weekend, and I don't direct another race until May 11th, so the second week of May. But the next 5 weeks, I'll be timing 4 to 5 races.
What's the Country Mile? You've mentioned that a couple times. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a 48-hour race at Beechwood Farms, which is north of TR and Marietta. Right now, it used to be a 5K loop, and if you do 33 loops, it's 100 miles. We had 350 runners do it this past year. 122 of them finished 100 miles in those 2 days. Next year, it's going to be the same format, 48 hours. It's going to start noon on April 4th. We're changing the course. It's going to be a 4.1 mile loop instead of a 3.1 mile loop. But yeah, it's basically people show up with a tent, an RV, a car. They camp out all weekend. Bring a lot of friends, bring a lot of family, and most of them are just shooting for 100 miles or shooting for a distance PR or whatever. But it's not on the outside. If you've never done one, it seems like, man, how in the heck can somebody run, walk, move, cover that much distance in 2 days? But when you really show up, it's like it's just people that want to spend time outside, putting one foot in front of the other. Obviously, some of the more dedicated athletes get to 100 miles, but sometimes it's just I've never done a half marathon, and I know for a fact I can't meet a 4 hour cutoff. So I'm going to come out to Matt's race and walk 13.1 miles, and for me, that's kind of the most rewarding aspect of what we can do is that because we're on a farm without road crossings, without really any closures, we can just say, hey, if you're slower than molasses trying to crawl uphill in wintertime, you can still come out here and do 13.1 miles. Just put one foot in front of the other. And if you do one lap and want to take a 4 hour break or a nap or go drink a beer or go play cornhole, you can do so and then get back out there.
Do most people when they hit that 100-mile mark, they call it a day? Did you have people that were like trying to go?
Yeah, I think so. This past year, we actually had great weather, but the first 6 hours of the race were very cold and windy. Kind of the wind that we're experiencing today in the upstate, we had similar conditions. So that kind of put a little damper on some of the expectations I had. I thought we would have quite a few runners go over 150 miles. We still had the female course record was broken. We had a female, Amy Varga. She ran 163 miles, and she was actually first place overall, which is actually not uncommon. We see a lot more female athletes doing better in these longer. I think it's something to do like they can just endure suffering and pain better than we can. I guess I don't know, but yeah, she did 163 miles. Our first place male was 120. But yeah, we had several runners go past 100. But you're right. Like most of the athletes will just stop at 100 because like, that is that's the bucket list for and the belt buckle that you get if you finish 100 miles you get a belt buckle. It is literally the size of a dinner plate. I mean it's huge. So yeah, I think athletes, once they get to 100, they're like, you know what? I got 12 hours left of this 48. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to go drink a beer. I'm going to go hang out with friends. I'm going to cheer on other competitors. And that's kind of what it is. The last 6 hours of the race, it's always just like, and we had an athlete, Tim Shelnut, who I actually used to coach. And he's like a 3:10 marathon guy. He'd done this race before and he's done a 100 miler, but he wasn't trained this year. And he had like 29 minutes on to do his last lap to get 100 before the 48-hour cutoff. And he came in like a minute and 10 seconds before the 48-hour cutoff. And it was just so cool. And he's very nonchalant about it, but like we all knew, like we were all just cheering him on and just trying to bring him home. And yeah, it's a race for everybody. I mean, we are true to that saying that we have something for everyone.
Yeah, and I've done 3 races that you put on, and the community is very strong. You've built a very strong community. The first one down in Anderson, when I got there, it seemed like a lot of people knew each other, either from the training runs or just from the races in general. And then same thing at Table Rock. Seemed like there's a lot of great people out there, a lot of people that know each other, and the camaraderie is unbelievable when you're out there suffering. And like I said, that was by far the hardest 50K I have ever run. I've run, I think my slowest outside of that is a 4:02.
Okay.
And I was, I think, 7:04 at the Conquer the Rock. And so that was, I was trying to do the math in my head before the race started, the night before and that sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe 7 hours, 6 hours. And sure enough, but it wasn't like I was dreading it or like, man, this is taking forever. It was just like, yeah,
Yeah, you
this is,
just you just have to you just have to do what the course gives you, and that
yeah,
course does not give you a lot of fast segments. I mean, I probably should did some more research on you. So you got a 4 hour. You've done some sub 4 hour 50Ks or 4 hour around 4 hour 50Ks. I
yeah.
mean, that's pretty. There's not many people that can break 4 hours in a 50K. So kudos to that. Yeah, that course, and it's different too because you might have some guys out there that have never been close to 4 hours and 50K, but they're mountain goats. They can still go out there and just climb and do that thing in 6.5, 6 hours. I mean, it. I would say that's obviously one of the tougher 50Ks in the state. It's probably one of the top 10 in the Southeast. I mean, I've done the Mountain Mist 50K. I think that one, I don't know if it's more challenging in elevation gain, but the terrain is a bit more. It was more problematic for me because a lot of large boulders you were kind of crawling around. Table Rock, obviously, you have to climb up Table Rock and you have to climb up over Pinnacle, but there are some sections where you can kind of get your butt moving a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely one of the toughest courses out there as far as the 50K distance goes.
And you also have a unique format, and I think you have a couple races that are kind of like similar to like a backyard ultra type of
Hmm.
format where you're doing either 2.5 or 3 miles every 45 minutes. Was it because of the backyard stuff that you just started
You
doing
know,
those, or
I think maybe yes and no. Like, and we are trying to put on the Last Outlaw, which is our backyard race, which we're trying to get like certified by LAS. Like, hey, it's a 4.1 mile loop. It's going to be at Beechwood Farms. But we have our longest day, which is a 2 mile loop. And the way that race goes is you have 45 minutes to do 2 miles on the first lap. And then the next lap, and so everybody does it. And obviously you can walk, fairly easily 22.5 minute pace for 2 miles. And if everybody finishes before 45 minutes, we shoot the gun again. And then the next lap, you have 44 minutes. And then you got 44 minutes to finish it, and then 43, 42, and it cuts all the way down. And basically, it's kind of an elimination style race. Once you can't meet the next lap cutoff, you're out of the race. It's a perfect race because it allows first time 50Kers to almost entirely walk the 50K to get that distance. But once you get past the 50K, it obviously escalates quite a bit in pace. We held that our first year. It was the year of the pandemic, middle of June we held it, And we had actually had one finisher. He ran his last lap in order to do the 100K. I'm sorry, it's called the longest day 100K. In order to finish that 60-second mile, that 2 mile segment at the very end of it, you have to run 7:30 pace. So not only did this guy basically from sunrise to sunrest in the middle of June, so it's like the summer solstice. It's hotter, hot as the Dickens. He was able to finish all 60 miles, and on his last lap, he had to run 7:30 pace to finish that 2 mile segment. I think he ended up beating it by like 3 or 4 seconds coming down to the wire. I mean, it was pretty cool. But yeah, I think I guess the concept of doing some of them timed looped format races was just to kind of encourage kind of everybody to participate at some level. Because obviously, when you show up to conquer the rock as you did, there's no patty caking, there's no holding hands, there's no like, oh, there's an easier option. Everybody has to climb that mountain, and no one's dragging you off of it. So it's that race is meant for the ones who can really accept the challenge. But I also wanted to include some races that I knew everybody could participate in at some extent, just to kind of get their feet wet with this whole ultra trail racing community.
Matt, from having this conversation with you and talking to Rich about some of the races that you've thrown that he's participated in, it sounds like you have an experience that you provide for people, good community. You're going to allow people to test themselves. You said a couple times that it's not going to have all the fancy bells and whistles. You're going to get done what you need to get done. But if, you can't throw a t-shirt in there because you need to provide some other stuff, you're going to do that. What are your standards for when you throw a race? What are going to be some of the things that people are absolutely always going to get when they participate in one of your races?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm one not getting lost. I mean, I've been to some trail races and even road races now that I've gotten lost. That I hate. That's my biggest worry when I send, especially at Conquer the Rock. I'm like, if I send all 200 athletes out there, I'm like, I cannot wait until the first person comes in, because the first question I'm going to ask them is, "Were the arrows good?" Because I don't know why. Like it's just something that's on my mind. Like I just want to make sure everybody goes. I don't care if you don't like the medal or the T-shirt. Did you go the right way? Did you enjoy the course out there? So it's like number one. Number two is we always have start line, finish line music. Jay Baker Media, he always takes care of that. We always want to provide a photo of everyone at our races. That's kind of a staple, just because if you go and climb that mountain, it's kind of nice to have a photo to take away. So, man, I remember that day, like that kind of stunk, but we got it done. We've opted more towards socks because they're more practical. Everybody has to put on a pair of socks before they put on their running shoes. I used to, it's funny because in high school, I used to trade my Prairie Heights, Indiana Prairie Heights shirts. I had wrestling shirts, cross country shirts, track shirts. What I would do is I would show up to track invitationals, cross country invitationals, and I would trade those shirts with other girls from other other teams. And so I would try to collect their T-shirts, and it was just a weird thing. And so by the end of it, I was like, I didn't have any of my own Prairie Heights shirts. But when I kind of got into race directing, I'm like, man, if I'm putting on 28 races a year, I had to come up with 28 different designs, and I knew all I had was the logo of the race. I'm like, these shirts aren't great. Like, the designs aren't great. So I just kind of went away with it, and socks are more practical. But yeah, from what I expect, what I want from a runner is just, we always just say, like, this is a platform for you. I'm not the biggest cheerleader at the end of races. I'm not going to give a big old hug once you finish a 50K. Like, that's not my jam. I am just providing you with a day, a course, and a couple little items you can take away with you to kind of commemorate your experience. After that, it's kind of up to you. Like, we all know that person who shows up and is looking for a bad time. Like, they just, they're asking all the wrong questions, and they're just complaining about all the little things that don't really matter. I don't consider those things. I am just looking to give you a path for your own journey. And then hopefully you make the best of it, I guess. But yeah, I think those are kind of our standards. It's nothing materialistic. It's more like, I hope I can at least take something from this day to commemorate and remember and kind of look back on like, God, like Rich is gonna, I know he's gonna look back on that race and he's like, man, I really remember bonking at mile 22 trying to climb up Pinnacle for the second time, which is the second highest peak in South Carolina. But yeah, like those are the things that we look for.
Well, I appreciate the guaranteed not getting lost because we've all gotten lost either on a
Yeah.
trail or doing a race, and that is not fun. Being a seasoned race director, do you have any goals for maybe something you're looking at a couple years down the road you want to throw, anything like that?
Yeah, I think and I'm gonna try to say this like as nicely as I can. Greenville needs a really and I've talked to other race directors about this, and I've even like I know that my issue is I don't think I could do it because I don't think I'm not that type of race director. I like looped formats. I like limited road crossings. I like less is more because I can kind of I know what I can control. When you try to direct a point to point road race and multiple road crossings and porta johns and safety concerns and drop off locations for athletes and drop like it just almost becomes more logistically a pain in the rear end for the athlete than it does the same as the race director. But I would like to put on a and as you guys as Rich knows, the Swamp Rabbit Trails are running down Greenville and splitting it and heading out towards Simpsonville. So eventually it's going to be finished where I think there should be a point to point marathon along the Swamp Rabbit Trail that finishes, at some destination. I would like to put on a fast marathon, but I, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I've always thought about trying to, and I've even tried to like host a race on the Foothills Trail, maybe the Foothills 77, but I've been told by all the locals, don't do it because, one, it's going to be, and it really is almost impossible to permit. But two, we don't need a race. I mean, we have so many races along that area that I think suited. I think if you really wanted to do the Foothills 77, which is a stretch from Table Rock all the way to Oconee, beautiful foothills trail. Yeah, just go and hike it, which I do plan on doing someday. But yeah, I don't have any. I'm not trying to add any races. If anything, I'm trying to get rid of some races. Not get rid of, but trying to. My kids are 4 and 5 now. We'll be 5 and 6 soon. They're doing sports. My weekends are going to get a little bit more hectic. Right now, we were actually supposed to go to soccer practice today, but it got canceled due to the rain. So yeah, I'm trying to streamline my race series. And I really love. I don't put on races if I don't love the course. And if I don't, it's not always has to be about the money, but it has to be about like, I love like Altamont half marathon is a course that I used to run almost every Wednesday when I first moved to Greenville. It's a great train run. And I put that race on every year and it loses money every year. It just wanted, but it's just like, man, I actually like it so much because like I can direct that race and I can run it myself while I'm directing it, which is probably not a thing most race directors to do, but I tend to run a lot of the races that I kind of manage. And I guess that's a testament to our volunteers and our race staff, our very small race staff that we have.
Well, Matt, I would say I love the socks. I think those are great. I'm a big fan of different types of swag than your standard, generic, dry fit tee or
Yeah.
athletic apparel or American apparel type tee. I love the socks. You also, Jim, they give out stickers. So I've been collecting those and I put those on my running bin that I bring to me with the races or the trails. Um, I did 100 miler last year up in New Jersey, and when we got to the turnaround, they said at the aid station, "Hey, just be mindful. There's been some reports that some people were changing arrows and stuff like this. So
Yeah.
just be aware of that." And I'm like, "What do you? That doesn't do me any good. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Be aware of what?
I
Yeah.
mean, how
Yeah.
do I know if I'm going?" So I love and I've gotten lost a couple times, so I love well marked courses. I also really enjoy the custom kind of wooden finishers medals and awards like that. So
Yeah.
that's a nice touch. And then I was going to ask you, you kind of touched on it about the potential for a foothills ultra, but you think the permitting wouldn't be possible?
Yeah, when I walk down that path, and I'm still even with the Conquer the Rock race, we still want to do a one loop. We want to go up Table Rock across the ridge to Pinnacle, and then we want to go out to Sassafras Mountain and back, and it would make it about 28 miles, and I'm sure I could find a way to sneak in 3 miles to make it a full, single loop. A lot of it is permitting issues, DNR, Greenville watershed, got a Duke Power, private landowners, and I think there are other people that are, interested in possibly hosting something like that. It's if they want to do it, go ahead. It's not really my cup of tea. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it is permitting issues for sure right now. And then just I have just been, I try to, and because I say I'm not an ultra guy because I really don't run them anymore, I try not to piss off the ultra community, which I've done a time or two. But yeah, like they're like, oh, just keep the foothills, and there is actually an unofficial Charles Raffensperger. He kind of helps manage it, but you can just simply do the Foothills Trail, FKT, or whatever, slowest time, whatever, and you can submit your finish time, and he'll send you a wallet. And I know we're PG-13, but it's got a pretty cool saying on it.
Right on. I have come across his site, and
Yeah,
yeah, I think that for me, I eventually would at some point would like to do the AT or the CDT or the PCT or even the Colorado Trail, and I think
yeah.
that
And and for
solo,
and for me, the I know there's great race destination races out there. I am so stressed about competing and racing. I don't want to sign up. I don't want to pay $500 to go fly out to Colorado and then spend more money on hotels and whatever just to be stressed out about a race. If I'm going to go see a beautiful course, I'm going to do it on vacation. I'm just going to go and do it and hike it and do my own thing. I don't. So for me, like the Foothills Trail is kind of the same thing. Like, why
yeah,
do I want to stress and pressure people to come and do this race? And they can just come anytime on their own accord and just hike that thing. And it really is a fantastic course. So yeah, just kind of leave it up to the people to do it on their own. They know it's there, and they can do it whenever they want.
right on, right on.
Matt, I must ask one last question on my end before we get into the final four if Rich doesn't have anything for you. I'm not all about the races and stuff. I'm always down to crew Rich, and one thing I always like when I crew is that they have good food. Do you have any pet peeves? Make sure you provide certain things for certain races or anything like that. Do you have anything that someone's gonna get from an aid station at your race that they're not gonna get somewhere else?
So I will say, and we're slowly bringing it back, but I used to inquire at all my races, all the longer ones, to like, hey, if you're coming to the race and you would like to provide a homemade baked item or homemade good or homemade whatever, please bring it. We actually that kind of couldn't be more true with our last race, Country Mile. Diane Stedman, huge shout out to her. She brings probably 5 or 6 trays of brownies to every one of our races, and of all the food that I put out, which is I bring the generic stuff, the fig Newtons, the potato chips, the pickles, the vanilla wafers. I could run a 50K because I'm around a 4 hour 50K guy. I could run a 50K on drinking nothing but Coca-Cola, ginger ale, and maybe half a pickle and one vanilla wafer. I kind of keep it low key, and most of my nutrition is liquid, like Tailwind, whatever. But I obviously have to understand that some people are out there just doing a 10-hour 50K, and they like to eat 2 meals in between. So we try to accommodate as much as we can. So we just really inquire to our runners, like, hey, bring a dish and put it on the aid station table. And it was really cool. I've got a couple photos, but Chester Bates, he brought these really cool shaped cookies that look like a shoe with laces and different colored icing on it. So yeah, we want people to not just be come to the race, and we engage in the race, like be a part of the race atmosphere, because I can only do so much, and I'm not a hooping, hollering, and cheering people on. I'm kind of really relying on the participants to bring that kind of energy to the race. So yeah, I mean, you're always going to see pickles, tailwind, and 2 liters of soda at my race, but yeah, most of our participants are the ones that really bring the home baked goods and all the stuff that runners really want to eat afterwards. A lot of our races we do post race pancakes. I think Rich, when he ran his 50K, I had a couple volunteers in the back just slinging pancake batter on our electric skillet, and we always just try to, and there's especially in a 50K of that nature, you were so calorically depleted, and your blood sugar is probably bottoming out. The first thing you want to do as soon as you finish is get some ginger ale on your belly to help soothe your stomach, and then just some glucose afterwards.
No doubt.
Well, shout out to Diane and Chester for making some of the
Yeah,
baked
yeah,
goods. I
heck yeah.
think
No,
that's awesome.
they did a great
And
job.
also, Fig Newtons and potato chips go a long way when you're out on the course. So shout out to you
Yeah,
for providing those.
yeah.
Matt, before we do get into the Final Four, you said you have a little bit of a break in terms of being a race director, but you have some events coming up in May. What are the upcoming events that you have on the calendar for, say, like May and into June?
So I got Knock on Woodstock, which formerly was called the Without Limits Running Series. That was the first race I ever directed 10 years ago in June. And that was when and it's crazy, and Rich has been to my races. So I've got like timing chips and TVs and everything, like recording your splits and posting it live online. When I first started directing races, we had a hole punch system. You came through our finish line and we had a hole punch like with a rope tied around it hanging from the tent because it was raining the whole weekend, and you just came in, you grabbed the hole punch, you punched your bib, and then you kept going, and then like periodically we would count the number of holes that you would have in your bib, and we would do like an Excel spreadsheet with like a Google sheet, we would share it. So it was chaos. So yeah, so Knock on Woodstock was coming up May 11th at Camp Spearhead. After that, we have our Downville Mile, which is, I think, probably one of the fastest miles in the state. We've not had a sub 4 minute performance, but we've had a couple of four flat 401, 404s, a slew of people under 430, and just so many. It's right along 85, Interstate 85, and it drops 130 feet for that mile. So everyone comes out to run fast. After that, we've got Cottonmouth, which is our beer relay. I have 200 people signed up for that one already, almost 70 teams. That should be a lot of fun. And then after that, we have our longest day race, which is sunrise to sunset on the summer solstice. You can do a 50K, half marathon, 50 miler, 100K. It's up to you.
And that's where the lap time comes
That's
down
where
each
the
time.
time format. So everybody basically, everyone can almost knock out a 50K just walking. But yeah, it goes from 45 minutes at 6 a.m. to 44 at 6:45, and then 43 at 7, and just keeps. We have a time schedule posted, but yeah, it's a hot one, but it's one that if you bring a 10 by 10 and a cooler full of ice and drinks, you can make it a good day. And a lot of people do distance PRs out there.
All right, I think I got my next 3 races lined up.
Yeah, longest day is pretty fun.
Awesome.
There you go. So, Matt, we have Final Four. We ask all our guests at the end of every podcast. First question I have for you: are you a coffee drinker?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we actually I mean I don't drink anything special, but I'm now buying some Silva coffee because they actually sponsored our race the past couple of years.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
I would just I 8 ounces probably, but I mix it with 16 ounces of ground, not 16 ounces of ground, but like I double brew it. And then I just have a little bit of creamer. My wife's trying to get me on this like healthy creamer. I can't go black. It just upsets my stomach. And I don't do sugar though. Just whatever the creamer that I have, which is hazelnut.
Have you tried just straight heavy whipping cream?
So because my wife is Russian, my in-laws live with us. That's what they drink, and I tried it for a while. And they just do heavy whipping cream with sugar, and they put a lot of sugar and stuff. Like it's crazy. So I try to, I don't like that much sugar in my stuff, so I just kind of but I can't do a sugar-free hazelnut. So yeah, I'm just a wuss when it comes to coffee. I gotta have just a normal hazelnut with sugar, not with sugar, but has sugar in it, and just a little bit, and that's good with me.
Okay. Matt, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Matt Hammersmith?
Oh, I think I dabble. I think I do things periodically throughout the week, and I kind of can tell when things are going awry, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally. And when when I start leaning one way or the other, I try to kind of keep it in check and start like, okay, I need to do this. But nothing that I do is ritualistic from one day to the next, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I'm at least a little bit more in tune with myself, especially over the recent years that I'm like, oh, you're not in a good place. You've got to start doing this. Like, and that seemed to help out. So I'm just listening to my body more. Like if I need more rest, if I need more fluids, if I need to go for a run, if I need to, whatever it is, I just kind of listen to myself more, and I can almost catch myself kind of slipping into those bad habits or bad behaviors that I kind of tend to, and we all do. We all kind of slip into a mode that's not our best self, and on that, and when you take a step back, you say, "Oh, you're doing that. That's not good because you don't. That's not you. That's not who you want to be."
Yeah.
But no, I don't think to be honest, I don't even brush my teeth every day. That's pretty sad to say.
It happens.
Been there.
We've been there.
Matt, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Well, it's funny you should say that because my wife for Christmas got me some Apple iPhone earbuds, and I love them. And because I don't know if it's just I need that stimulus throughout the day, and I kind of work from home. I work in my garage, I work in my office or my home office, and I'm always listening to something. And I'll listen to a couple of financial podcasts. I'll listen to a couple self-help podcasts, but a lot of it I'm just putting it on Spotify random or Pandora random, and I'll just try to find something that kind of moves me. And it's I don't even know if I'm listening to it. If it's more or less it's just filling the space in my head so I can kind of focus, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I just don't like quietness, but yeah, I'm listening to all kind. Actually, I'm doing more podcasts. Now that I feel kind of not naive. What's the word? Um, Egocentric because I'm listening to myself on my own podcast.
It's always a reality check when you hear your own voice. Rich and I have been editing ourselves for 4 years now, and it's always a good check when I go back and listen to myself and oh man, I say this too much, or I rely on this too much, or I said I'm here, or I'm there. So
Yeah,
I sound like that.
yeah. No, I actually I think obviously I think a lot of people experimented with like a bunch of different stuff during the pandemic, and I would record like little monologues. Like if I wasn't feeling good, I'm like, all right, why am I not feeling good, and why I can't. At the time, I felt like I can't really go tell them about it, and I didn't really have any friends that I was really really close with. I could talk about it. I'm like, oh, I'll just do a little monologue. So I would just talk into my phone and record it, and then I would listen back, a couple days later and be like, "Man, you really were in a rough spot." It's amazing how you can listen to yourself, and then if you're removed from that feeling or situation or whatever that mental or spiritual or energy lull, once you're removed from it and you listen, like, holy crap, like, yeah, you were in a bad spot. So yeah, it is kind of interesting to listen to yourself, not only how you sound and what you say, but like you can almost feel what you were feeling when you were saying it and how you don't feel that way now.
Always good to have that self-reflection.
Yeah.
Matt, did you say your wife is Russian?
Yeah. Born in Stavropol, which is very close to the Ukraine border, very close to the Black Sea. She lived there for. Her parents still live in the same house. She was born in 1991, so the fall of communism, the fall of the Soviet Union, and then when she was 18, she moved up to Moscow, or 17 when she moved to Moscow, was competing pretty competitively. She was a national champion in Russia when she was younger. And she had a cousin that actually lived in Columbus, Ohio, who reached out to the coaches at Columbus or at Ohio State and said, "Hey, my cousin, she's kind of a decent runner. And you might want to look at her time. She's trying to move over to here, maybe get a scholarship or something." And then the coach is, kind of small world. Coach Gary,
Robert Gary,
Robert
yeah, he's down
Gary,
at Furman.
he's at Furman. Coach Robert Gary was at Ohio State,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Yeah, she's good, but she's not Big Ten good." And so he used to coach with Sue Parks, and Sue Parks's father was the head coach at Eastern Michigan. Sue was the head coach at Ball State, Sue then transferred over to Eastern and saw, Vika's times and says, "All right, well, let's give her a crack." And she just walked by, but she's like, "All right, yeah, I'll give you a full ride." And my wife, well, my nobody at the time, Vika moved in, uh, didn't know a lick of English, flew over to Eastern, flew into Detroit, got on a bus, came over to Eastern, and 6 months later was a MAC champion. And then 6 months after that, I saw her running her first cross country race, and I was like, I could just like picture her running over the hill. I'm like, who in the heck is this? Because Eastern Michigan, the boys were always good, the girls always stunk, and everyone's like, oh, there's this girl now at Eastern, she's really good. And by her senior year, actually her junior year, she was beating everybody in the MAC, beating everybody in the Big Ten, beat everybody at Ohio State, and then she went to NCAA championships 2 years in a row for the 3K steeplechase, and yeah, just kind of hit the ground running.
Nice. Do you speak any Russian?
No, no, I'm so
No?
bad. I think I'm an old dog that can't learn new tricks.
No. All right.
I just can't do it. And my kids now, I'm telling you, my kids are going to be fluent in six months to a year. They're going to know they're going to know both.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Matt, last one we have for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures? It could be food related. You spent some time in Michigan. Maybe you like a Detroit style pizza. Maybe you have a favorite craft beer. We talked about some music. Maybe you're a closet Swiftie.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not a closet Swiftie. My band that I really like to jam out to is the Jet. We Were Promised Jetpacks. It's a Scottish rock band. I say the guilty pleasure food wise, love vanilla ice cream with a the amount of vanilla ice cream that I put in there. I put the same amount of crunchy Peter Pan peanut butter, and I just mix them up and eat it. It's definitely not healthy, but that's kind of my food wise. I pretty much 5 times a week, I built a little sauna in my garage, and I created a cold plunge out of a chest freezer. So
Yeah.
I'm doing that as soon as I get done with this call. I'm going to go turn it on. I'm going to go sit in it for 40 minutes, sweat like crazy, drink one IPA, and then I'm going to go and sit in the cold plunge for 5 minutes and just try to get some inflammation down, and I'll be ready for bed.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I do it. I do at least 5 days a week, and it just I feel so much better afterwards. I don't know why. I just do.
Do you have a filter on the cold plunge?
I do. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
right.
it's one of those. It creates O2. I can't remember what it's called. It was the most expensive part about the cold plunge. It was like
Yeah.
$300, but the rest of the cold plunge, I mean, I just used a used freezer unit, and then I had to paint it. I had to line it with a pond liner to kind of seal it. And then once I turned it on, I bought a $40 thermometer that sets the temperature right at 49 degrees, and it just stays there. And I put a little chlorine in it once every month or so, and I've only had to change. I've had it for 3 years now, or 2 years, 2.5 years, and I've only changed the water twice, so it keeps it pretty clean.
Okay, right on. What you have a favorite IPA down here or brewery?
Um, Man, no, I like Space Dust, and I like Pernicious Wicked Weed out of Asheville is really good. Yeah, I could yeah, unfortunately drink too many of those because it's a pretty high alcohol content.
Yeah, those IPAs will get you.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for your time tonight. Like we've said,
Yeah.
Rich and I grew up as runners. We really fancy going to good races and having a good time. And I appreciate the fact that you're putting on good events.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys bringing me on. I literally thought we were going to talk more about wrestling. I was like so prepared to like show you guys my body fire.
Oh.
It
Did you
was
catch
like the only
NCAs?
move I could perfect.
Did you catch NCAs?
No, I did not.
No.
No, yeah, I'm I was trying to watch the Masters for a little bit. I have over the recent years, one because I've been working so much. I am not a sports guy anymore, and I'm trying to like I haven't watched the NFL in a while. I haven't. And my cousin, he was a wrestler, and he'll watch it. Some I'll see him post it on Facebook. I'm like, all right, let me get into it. But yeah, I haven't really dug into it. I'm still actually following up on my old high school. We have two twins that have won the state title back to back, the Hagermans, which is funny because I used to wrestle with their dad, He was a
Oh,
year
nice.
younger than me, and he had kids at an early age, and now they're in high school winning state championships. So it's kind of cool to follow along those kind of storylines for me.
Right on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Matt, like Jimmy said, we really appreciate you coming on. It was an honor, pleasure chopping it up with you for a little bit, hearing a little bit more about the race series and all that you got going on. And I will see you in May for the
Yeah.
Woodstock. I'll be up there.
Well, if you guys want a Cottonmouth beer relay, it's a relay of two. I'll get you guys a comped entry. That means Jimmy has to do some running or beer drinking.
You
And
don't
he
He can
can
want
do
drink
me
either
more.
of those.
drinking. You don't
Yeah.
want me doing either one of those. I'll do some running, but you do not want me drinking. We talked about this on Monday with a guest, but the last time I had a sip of beer, Rich and I were scrapping in the streets of Denver.
Okay, all right, I like it. Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, I got 2 liters of soda for you.
All right. I do drink hot waters. I am a hipster.
Okay, nice. All right. I've been kind of dabbling in the non-alcoholic beers. I try not to drink at races anymore, which kind of doesn't get me in trouble. It's just like, why am I drinking 12 beers over a 48-hour period? It was kind of stupid.
Right on.
Yeah, you want to have all your faculties about you just in case.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks again, Matt. Really
Yeah, thanks
appreciate
a
it.
lot, Matt, and good luck tomorrow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm going for it. I'm either it's gonna hurt. I haven't run a mile in so long. I haven't really run a really hard race in quite a while. So whether it's good or bad, I'm excited just to kind of enjoy training and running again, which has been a while.
Well, that's awesome. Well, have fun, enjoy it, and I look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Take care.